The Badgers add a receiver in the recruiting room in 2026. Let's talk about the newest commit to that class on Wisconsin. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. It's fun to talk about recruiting when you got to commit to talk about. It has been a hot minute. We are going to talk about Tayshon Bardo, 2026 receiver committing to the class. We haven't got to fire the cannons in a minute, so we are going to shoot those suckers off and then talk about what he looks like on film and what he might bring to this receiving room.
Fire the recruiting cannons. Another one is headed to Madison on Wisconsin.
So let me get the particulars out of the way. Tayshon Bardo commits to the University of Wisconsin, 2026 kid out of Indiana, 6 foot, 188 or 185 pounds, somewhere in that range. I've seen him listed a couple different spots. Composite 3-star, 87 on the composite. Offers from Michigan State, Vanderbilt, Indiana, among others. Justin, Curtis Hall and I are going to talk about this a little bit tomorrow as well, but Justin follows recruiting as close as anybody, so I thought it'd be cool to jump on and do a quick show with Justin and I. What do you see on film with Bardo, Justin?
Yeah, we had talked about it. There's been a lot of hand-wringing over Chimere Dike leaving and going to Florida and being productive there. And watching his film, it's pretty interesting how he would be the guy I would comp out of the Badgers receivers most recently. Similar height, similar weight, move pretty similarly on film. He's a guy who's got some twitch to him. He's pretty adept at being shifty in open space. But he's not a guy who I would say, looking at the film, that he's a huge home run hitter in terms of speed. He's a guy who I think is capable at kind of being a productive route runner. Seems to have a good feel for finding holes in zone. So I think he's a guy who, with time, will really develop once he hits a college weight program. I think there's an extra gear that's kind of hidden on him yet when he fills out a little bit more. But I like the pickup. I think he's a guy who's got a high floor and is going to be somebody who's going to be in that rotation at some point for sure. We'll see what his ceiling is.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really good stuff. A lot of nuggets you just put there. I agree. Physically, he kind of does comp to a DK. He's got kind of that build, that same size. I think a similar athletic profile. Mm-hmm. I will say the one area where I think he might be better than DK, and it's very early, and we have to see. I think he might be a little better after the catch. I like his ability after the catch to turn up the field. He's almost got a bit of a running back instinct in the open field where he gets north and south really quickly, catch, turn, go. There's not a lot of messing around, and the short area quickness is pretty impressive to me. So I think he might give you some yak. I also like former basketball player. Like there's athleticism there. You can see it when he goes up and snatches the ball. There's a lot of
high
catches
points, sure.
Yep. Or even kind of that toe tap where he's getting to the edge of the sideline, catching away from the frame and bringing it in. So I think he's a pretty natural catcher. I like the athleticism. I like the yak ability. And the last one, I'm curious on where you think he'll play. I think he could play slot or boundary. I think he's got some versatility there.
Yeah, I think he'd play all three spots. Realistically, and that's one of the things. Of the guys that they're recruiting right now, he's the only guy that I really think profiles in that way that is at the top of the board right now. The other two guys being Zachary Washington and Cabell. I don't see either one of those guys being able to have the versatility to play a slot. They just don't have a lot of that short area, twitchy kind of movement in short area space or crossers. I think that they're more home run hitters. So I like that. Like, this is the guy who I kind of figured was going to be this role for them. And I like it. I think there's a chance that they do go a little bit bigger in the slot than what we've seen with the previous guys. I don't think that that's a big deal. It may be a good thing under Grimes. We'll see how that guy is used. Clearly, that's the position we're going to see the biggest difference between last year and this upcoming year is how the slot guys are used, because they are not going to be – they're probably still going to lead the team in catches potentially, but they are not going to be like substantially higher than anybody else.
Yep, I would agree there. I think you're going to be shifting roles. Kobe says Coach Reed ain't playing. Jordan D said finally a receiver with a little fire emoji. Tyler Strieber's got the let's go red and white. There's some special teams possibilities here too with him. You know, he's a guy who can return punts a little bit, has some special teams versatility with his team. Until they can find a guy back there, man, they need to keep looking because it has been way too long. Like, who's the last dangerous punt returner we've had that they punted to him? Is it Brookshank?
Aberdaris.
Aberdaris? Alec, like, Then Critching was a kick returner, not even a punt returner. It's just been way too long, man, where we've had somebody back there that's been dynamic. Bardo has a little bit of that in his game as well, maybe something there. I want to ask you, next segment, actually, I want to ask you how many receivers you think they should get in this class. Let's continue on here for a second. Is there a star that they're going to get a receiver in the 26 recruiting class? Because I don't think Bardo's necessarily a star. I don't know if Cabela is either. I don't think he is. I like him.
I think Zachary Washington is a chance.
You see, that's the guy I was leaving it for the end. I think he's maybe the boom prospect out of this group in 26, right?
I think he's got legit size. Like he's probably a 6'1", 6'2" kid, and he can really run. He could take the top off the defense, and I think he actually he's a pretty fluid athlete. I like him on the outside. I'm praying that they get involved in this guy. You've seen me throw up, some information on Dallas Dickerson. For the love of God, get in on this kid more. We've offered him already 10.36 100 speed, and
so fast.
And not only that, he's actually pretty twitchy and choppy in the short area. Like he will drop and run the button hooks and stuff like that type patterns. Where I look at it and I'm like, this is a guy that's going to be a problem because defenders are going to have to set up for the deep ball, and he's going to be able to just sit 8 yards and pick up easy catches left and right. Because of that, because he's such a short area guy that can run. I haven't heard a ton on him, but like the film is really nice. So we'll see. Maybe that's a guy that moves up the board.
I would argue if you got a 10-3, 10-4 type guy with some size that you have a chance on, I don't care what the film looks like.
Yeah.
Like, I almost don't care. Like you get one of those guys to cycle just to roll the dice.
I agree, because what he does is there's gravity with a guy with that kind of speed. Because you can have a 4-5 corner out there, it won't matter. He'll go by him, especially at 6'1". Like he's legitimately, and if you watch his film, there's a couple of plays on there. He's playing in Georgia where you see a corner turn and try to track him down, and he is legitimately pulling away like this. And it's like he is that level of fast that corners can't stay with him like in close proximity when he breaks loose.
Yeah, I'd say this: technique don't mean bleep when the other guy goes meep meep.
Yep.
Like I just came up with that, by the way. That's my. But yeah, like speed kills. We got to have more speed on the edge, and I really like Tayshon Bardo. I really do. Yeah. I think he's a really good pickup, but he's not a burner. And last year we didn't get a burner. Eugene Hilton, we really like him too. He's not a burner. Kyan Barry Johnson was the year before. He's a slot guy. They got to get a boundary guy with real speed of 4-4. And if it's a project, it's a project. You develop them then. That's why you have Coach Reed. So I hear you, man. You got to get some speed there. We're going to take one quick break. We're going to come back, talk about how many guys they got to get in the 26 class. Because I was talking to Curtis, and he brought up an interesting point. He's like, well, what if you think about Hamper, Tretch, some of those guys that they were able to get in the portal or get Tretch back, which really add to the youth of position. So I don't know, maybe don't need as many. We're going to talk about that next, coming up on Locked On Badgers with the great Justin Jolka. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show. And a quick second to always say thank you to everybody tuning in. Today's episode brought to you by our good friends of the show over at Nissan. Listen, Nissan's incredible. We get to work with them every March. Right now, the Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan, the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our locked-on college basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart. From top-seeded stars to unexpected upsets, these guys showcase the strength and sheer power to push their team forward. This team's Armada Team of the Week is the Duke Blue Devils. John Shire's team, led by National Player of the Year candidate Cooper Flagg, just ripped through the ACC, going 19-1. The biggest at 434 points in ACC games, the largest point differential by a power conference team in league play since Kentucky in 53-54. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer. That's exactly what the Blue Devils have done here. It's clear that our Team of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of the Nissan outstanding vehicles. Take the Armada, Rogue, Pathfinder, go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Today's episode also brought to you by our good friends over at Roy. Roy is changing the NIL game. It's transparent. It is the future of sports. Before Roy, NIL negotiates NIL stuff. Sometimes you don't always know what's going on. Fans don't have a clear way to support the athletes they want to support. With Roy, you can be part of that, change the game, and support Wisconsin Badger student athletes in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to choose a player you want to support, decide how much, receive exclusive content from the athletes back. Plus, the best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. Risk-free way to show support for the Badgers. The Roy app is giving fans control. Download the Roy app today at the App Store. Start backing Wisconsin Badgers athletes the way they deserve with transparency, trust, and real impact. The future of college sports is here. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. All right, let's come back to this. Let's talk about how many guys do we need in this class, the receiver room, Justin? And does the addition of Hamper and Tretch coming back change the equation for you?
No. Until you start hitting on dynamic guys that can be highly productive, I want 3 guys. And I think that we're actually fairly thin on the outside. I think Hamper offers some potential, but until he breaks loose and actually shows that he's a plus guy at that position, I don't want to treat any of these guys like they're a difference maker. And until you have that, you need to keep searching for it. Ohio State doesn't stop recruiting just because they have, 6 4-stars in their wide receiver room. They'll stack on top of it until they have guys that they know are going to go out there and be productive. We need to continue to do that. So to me, it's 3. Like we under-recruited the outside spots, and we kind of try to make up for some of that in the portal, but I'm not sure you find top-end guys doing that. Like if you're going to hit on a guy, he's probably coming out of high school.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. As my lighting just darkens for some reason, it looks like I'm in a dungeon. I need an audio video guy to come help me out with this, but I agree with you. Like, you got to stack talent, and we like Hamper, but Hamper's not a sure thing. You recruited 2 high school. He's not a burner either. 100%. We had a question up here from somebody asking about Quincy Burrow's little brother. He went to Clemson. Unless I missed that, right? He committed to Clemson.
He went to Clemson, yeah.
Naheem Burrows. Yeah, somebody asked about Quincy's brother. Yeah, he went to Clemson. That's Tyler Strieber. I love Naheem Burrows, but yeah, he committed to the Clemson like a week ago or so. Yeah, you got to keep adding bodies and frankly, I was going to say you got to keep adding bodies until you hit on some, but even then it doesn't matter. You got to keep adding bodies because when you hit on them, they're either going to transfer, they're gone in a year or 2 anyway. So no excuses. I think you need 3. I think you need, unless you hit on an incredible 2, which I don't think this class is going to do that. You need 3 bodies in this room.
They're not in on anybody who I look at that is like an instant impact kind of guy who has freak attributes. They have some guys, some big potential. I think Washington is legitimately a guy who can end up being a number 1 here if everything hits. I think he's got those kind of tools. Dallas Dickerson, if they get in on him, I think it projects as a guy who can at least take the top off the defense type ability.
Which gives you something different in this room.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of recruiting receivers too, is finding different skill sets. And one of the skill sets they're lacking is that big boundary guy that can run like a gazelle. Jordan D wondering if Bardo can get off press man coverage, or you just kind of saying that might be the differentiator. I don't know.
You don't see much in high school. Like they play off in high school. It's very rare to see corners play up and get physical with a guy. But I think that he is going to, like every young receiver, is going to take some time to work on that. Like none of them are typically, unless it's an OSU guy who is typically physically advanced, you don't find a guy who's capable of doing it. And the reason why those guys can get away with it is because they'll run by people. So you don't want to get up and press on them.
I will say this is the type of skill set that you do have to ask that question. Because this is the type of receiver at the college level you're going to press, because you don't press the guy who can run 4.3 as much, because if he gets a step on you, he just goes.
Misstep and you're done.
Yep, and it's hard to press the 5'10" shifty guys. Like you put those guys in the slot, it's hard to get hands on them. This is the question he's probably going to have to answer, and if he can't, then he maybe just is the slot guy, or he's the off receiver, and it just might be what it is. But you need those too. I had a comment in here that someone brought up DK, because you had brought him up, wondering if anyone saw the DK 4.3 coming. I will say
no.
Combine numbers after the year, median pro day numbers after the year are always a little faster, right? Just because kids work on it, it is what it is. But no, I did not see that speed coming from DK.
By no means did I think he was slow, but I would have thought he would be like a mid 4.4 maybe. Like I wouldn't have put him in a 4.3. I think we both thought he was more of a 4.5 guy while he was at Wisconsin.
Marty says, I'll fix your studio lighting. Yes, dude, please hit me up. Seriously, like I can't get this thing to balance out, and it keeps dark. This is actually
Ryan needs an electrician.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yes, Marty. Marty's amazing, by the way. Hit me up, Marty. I would love that. Mitch says, I think the receiver room looks great, but it comes down to is always can the quarterback get on the ball. How would you grade this receiver room just going into this year? Mitch says it looks good. I said great. He said good. I think good is a strong word.
Yeah. I wouldn't go. There's nobody in that room that I look at that I say this guy is going to be consistent week to week, putting up big numbers. Tretch might be that guy, but until we see him do it week to week, I am hesitant to do that. Kojiel is the guy you look at and you say he's likely to be productive every week. Like right now, I'd be shocked if he doesn't give you 40 yards receiving more weeks than he doesn't.
Yeah, I would say B minus B, somewhere in that range. It feels like we have a collection of solid, and even Vinny. I think Vinny is a good player, but Vinny can get taken out. Penn State did it, unfortunately. I think it's solid. I don't know if we have a guy, and this is a comment down here I agree with from Ethan. I don't know if he said Soul Taker's in the 26th class, but in the receiver room right now, I don't know if we have a true number one. Like a true can scare the crap out of a defense, and they have to like stay up late to figure out how to take him away.
Yeah.
I don't think we got that right now.
Somebody asked me who the last, like, why we can't get a guy with the speed and shifting it or route running of Aberderis. And I'm like, Aberderis low key wasn't super fast. What he was is he's the most fluid receiver Wisconsin has had in the last, since what, Lee Evans?
I mean, he was probably more fluid than Lee Evans. Lee Evans was just a freak show. Like, Aberderis, his route running was incredible. He was fluid.
He lost very little speed in his movement, and that was why he was so effective. What's his name? Erickson, too, was similar. He wasn't quite as good as Aberderis, but similar type of skill set. They could really use a guy with that type of skill set again.
Also why both were good return men, right? Because they were so fluid that they could change direction quickly, not lose speed. And they got north to south really fast. Yeah, I agree with you there. Let's throw a couple more questions in here. This one's a nice comment from Dominic. Says, I just want to say I truly appreciate what you guys do. I love the Badgers. The recruiting process and hearing about it each day makes my day so truly appreciated. Thank you for tuning in, Dominic. That's awesome. We appreciate you. Peter, hit me up, Peter. Seriously, hit me up on Twitter. He said he can help me out as well with lighting. Yeah, dude, please hit me up. I am hopeless with this right now. Mitch says our number one is Koziel. Mark F. Ballard will be the football version of Tanjay, transfer of the year. Listen, if he is, that transforms the offense. So, Mark, I would love it.
He's got the speed. He's a legit 4.4 guy. I think somebody in the offseason said he was tracked at like a high 22 mile per hour mark, like almost 23. Yeah. That would have won last offseason's time. And the biggest time that they had during that was Burrows. It was like a 22.3 or something like that, or 0.6. So if he can be legitimately that and and bring the effort level to do it, and if it's ever going to happen, it's going to happen right now. He's a guy who's on the clock. He has every opportunity to take one of those starting spots and run with it. Like the physical tools are there. The effort level has to match it.
Yeah, and he's all of 6'2" with that speed, so he has the frame to go along with the speed.
205, so he's got a decent size.
Like he's everything you want when you're building a receiver in the lab. It's just a matter of can he put it together, and not everybody does. Not everybody does, and that's what I've heard. I don't know if I put it on the show, but I can tell. I'll say it on the show. I know, Justin, I've told you this. I've talked to most Ohio State guys, and from their perspective, I don't know this, but this is what they told me: is at times there were effort questions. There were times where the coaching staff wanted more effort out of him, and it just didn't happen for whatever reason with Ballard. That being said, as Justin very aptly pointed out, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in his last year. Like, so let's hope the fire's lit, because if it is, he changes the offense. And it doesn't have to be a high volume guy. It could be a catcher to a game, but where he's ripping off big chunks of yardage and he's threatening the safeties and he's backing people off.
The worst thing that could happen with him coming in would be to come in with a chip on his shoulder and an ego and think that because he's more physically talented than some of the other guys in that room, that he doesn't have to earn it. He needs to come in here and act like he's a walk-on and bust his butt. Because if he does that, he'll be a draft pick by the time he leaves the season.
Yep. And I'll say this too. By the way, Ethan, this is a true and sad point. Says young Badgers haven't seen a true number one receiver. Yeah, if you're 12-ish, you just the last couple of years.
I mean, you had two of them on the 2011 team. You had Aberderis and you had Toon. Those guys were both legitimate number one receivers in the Big Ten.
I feel like Cephas was a one. Is that crazy?
I don't. I think he was. I mean, he had 700 plus yards in his senior year, and he was somebody you had to actually game plan for.
That's the thing, right? You could get him. You get numbers, but Cephas could physically win one-on-ones against really good corners.
He did it against Ohio State. He was the only guy that did anything in that game.
He did it against Iowa. Like, he could win the tough matchups. And I think that's what a number one is. It's not just the numbers. It's, can you win a matchup against a real corner, a real number one? Cephas could do that.
if you want somebody that's going to be 1,000-yard guy, you have to go back to Aberdaris. And then before that, Lee Evans was the freak show and Chris Chambers type guys.
Yeah, they were. All right, we are going to wrap it up there, guys. I have to do a shorter show for this. We'll also talk. Curtis is on the show for tomorrow. We already recorded it, so we talk a little bit about Tayshon Bardo as well, but we also get into expectations for the team and what should Badger fans calibrate towards. So that's coming up tomorrow. Always appreciate Justin coming in and talking about it's nice to get a recruiting win, Justin. Maybe let's just wrap up there. It's nice to get some momentum going back. Yeah. It's been a while.
And this could have a positive reflection now on the rest of the recruiting class. This could put some pressure on somebody like Washington or Cabell. I don't think Washington so much because I think he's the top of the board guy, but Cabell might be looking at it now and saying, I have to pick my spot because if I don't, it may not be there in another month. There are other guys that are they may not be on the official visit list, but they very well could be guys that they're willing to take a commitment from.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good point. And I also think they will wait for Washington just because he has the speed that you're looking for. But yeah, a guy like Cabell could certainly put some pressure on them. And also, let's be honest, like recruits like seeing other kids commit. They like being part of classes that are filling up. They like being part of momentum. So just getting that ball rolling helps, man. Like it all builds together. All right, we're going to wrap it there. Go check out Locked On Big Ten when you're done here. All the biggest stories over in there. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in on Wisconsin, and we will talk later.